cool! That's right, boys. Mondo cool.
Drakengard 3 is a third-person action RPG that acts as a prequel to the entire Drakengard series. As such, no prior knowledge is necessary. This game was developed by Access Games and published by Square Enix. Drakengard 3 follows our protagonist Zero, and oh my god, this game is insane! And you know what? I fucking love it. This game is shrouded in mystery, and is very slow to unveil said mysteries. In fact, it isn't until the very final stretch of the game where all of the major plot points are completely revealed and fully explained. If that wasn't crazy enough on its own, the game doesn't even give you access to said final stretch until you get every single weapon in the game. This is brilliant because it truly makes you feel like you earned the right to know just what the hell is going on and why. This is done so well, in fact, that it drastically changes the entire perception of previous events in the game. One of the things I really liked about playing this game up until this point is that our protagonist Zero feels more like a villain than anything else. The main point of the game, for a large majority of it, is that Zero needs to kill her 5 sisters. She gives vague justifications as to why, and as a result, just comes off as a angry, selfish bitch. I like this because of how unique it was. I've never seen a game before, at least one that isn't obvious parody or satire, that has what appears to be a completely unjustifiable villain as its protagonist. However, being as familiar with the director's work as I am, I knew there was going to be more to it than that, and I certainly wasn't disappointed. These revelations colored my entire experience in a different light, in a very good way. Kudos to Yoko Taro for his unique storytelling methods. I also genuinely enjoyed the entire cast of characters. Almost every single one of them, be it friend or foe, is dark and twisted in interesting ways, which is very reminiscent to the original Drakengard actually, where most of your companions are pretty much insane. Even characters that seem well-adjusted and normal are actually hiding something about themselves you may not fully grasp until later on. However, I do want to put some emphasis on the relationship between Zero and her dragon Mikhail. Before the game even came out, I was fully ready to hate this dragon because he sounded like an annoying child. However, he quickly grew on me as the relationship that he has with Zero is incredibly endearing. Zero is seemingly annoyed by him and genuinely is from time to time, but there's always a sense of underlying love coming from her even when she chastises him. They also balance each other out, as Zero is a loud, angry, and vulgar woman while Mikhail is earnest, naive, and incredibly innocent. Him being so genuine also does well to contrast with the dark and twisted nature of the game. However, the game isn't entirely just a dark and messed up experience, as there are times here and there where the game tries to be humorous. These range from mildly entertaining to genuinely pretty damn funny. They took me completely off guard at first because it's never been like this in any of the Drakengard games or Nier for that matter, so I was pretty surprised to see such obvious comedy bits. But they managed to work well enough in the game. There's not too many of them, but there are just enough to be entertaining. All in all, the narrative as a whole was very entertaining. The dark twistedness, the insanity, and even the genuinely sad and lachrymous moments all meld together for an unforgettable experience. When you first start the game, you're greeted with an extremely beautiful CG cutscene. It's simply gorgeous and does well to set up the game. Sadly, it's the only one, and it's the best the game's ever gonna look. Now, the character models in the game are actually really well done. Part of this is because of how distinct each character looks. Kimihiko Fujisaka, the man responsible for the character designs, did an excellent job in designing several visually unique characters. Since one of the themes of the game is contrast, most of the designs actually go against the nature of the characters, which adds even more to them, I feel. Going back to the actual visuals of the game's environments look okay. They're not anything to brag about, but I wouldn't exactly say that they're bad either. I'd say they're just about passable. What isn't okay, however, is the game's biggest issue by far, which is the frame rate. The game's clocked at about 30 frames per second for the majority of the experience. However, there are times where the game simply chugs. It was never game-breaking, but definitely annoying. There's also some screen tearing now and then, but that's just a mild issue. Keiichi Okabe, the man responsible for the soundtrack of Nier, my favorite soundtrack of any video game ever, composed the music of Drakengard 3. Now, while I wouldn't necessarily say that Drakengard 3's soundtrack is as good as Nier's, it's definitely up there. Okabe was asked specifically to do a soundtrack that was different from Nier, and he certainly succeeded. Unlike Nier, which had a general, consistent feeling of somberness, Drakengard 3's soundtrack is more varied. Along with slow tracks that are accompanied with soft vocals, we have some tracks for boss fights that are accompanied by electric guitar. While I did enjoy some tracks more than others, I can't say any of them were bad. Same goes for the voice acting. The performances here are great. Everyone really gave it their all to portray these characters, and the dub would be great if it wasn't for the lack of lip syncing. No attempt at all was made to redraw the animations for the English voices, which comes off as lazy. What's even worse is that if you want to play the game with the Japanese audio instead, you have to shell out $5 and have 10 gigabytes of space on your hard drive. It's bad enough it's such a big file, but why do I have to pay extra for a feature that usually comes for free? And I would say that unless you are a huge stickler for the sub versus dub, I don't really think it's worth paying the extra $5. The dub, even if the lip syncing is completely off, is still really good. Drakengards 1 and 2 were more in the vein of Dynasty Warriors, where you have to run around in giant plains filled with enemies that you could hack and slash or burn to cinders with your dragon. The third game in the series decides to chuck that formula away and is instead a more straightforward action RPG. Instead of giant levels filled with enemies, you instead go through a more linear level structure where you simply go from point A to point B, much like the Devil May Cry series. Within these levels, you can find chests filled with goodies to inspire you to explore, such as gold, weapons, and weapon materials for upgrading. This sadly leads me into my biggest complaint with the gameplay, the upgrade system. Now, the system works, it's functional, but the conditions you need to fulfill are kind of ridiculous. Every time you level up a weapon, you need a material base and gold. The idea of using material base is fine, but the gold requirement is what really hurts it. You need an insane amount of gold to level up these weapons, particularly some of the weapons that you get late in the game. You also get tons of weapons, so you're going to be finding yourself with a lot of weapons stuck on level 1 that you don't know what to do with simply because you don't have enough gold to upgrade them. This could have easily been fixed if it had just been the materials that were all that you needed in order to level them up. That, or they could have just stuck with how the previous games handled it, where they leveled up based on kills, which I thought was a lot of fun. However, the combat itself is thankfully a lot of fun, both on the ground and on the dragon. The combat isn't the deepest I've ever seen. It's certainly no Devil May Cry or Ninja Gaiden in terms of complexity, but it's definitely a fairly above average action game. As you play through the game, you'll gain the use of 4 weapon types: swords, spears, combat bracers, and chakrams. Each weapon is useful in different situations, such as swords, which are generally well balanced, the spears being slow but really strong, the combat bracers having limited range but are very quick and very good with one-on-one enemies, and chakrams, which are the weakest but has the greatest range and is the best with groups. You can switch between each weapon type during battle, and even between combos. I feel this keeps the combat generally fresh throughout the duration of the game. This, coupled with just how fast-paced the combat is, it makes for a really fun time. The dragon sections in the game are also generally improved over the previous games. In this game, it actually feels like you're riding on a dragon. The dragon sections in this game are just a ton of fun, and are typically used for boss fights, which are some of the most intense moments in the game. Something you can do with both Zero and the dragon, however, is in toner mode. When the character is covered in enough blood, you could choose to go in a sort of berserk state, where you're invincible and your attacks are more powerful. This is a key gameplay mechanic that you're going to be using very often, and is a lot of fun to use. Seeing your enemies ripped to shreds while using in toner mode literally never gets old. Drakengard 3, much like Nier, and the rest of the series for that matter, is definitely not for everyone. Not everyone's going to be able to appreciate or understand the game's message, or just the general tone and presentation. Not to mention the game does suffer from some undeniable issues like the frame rate and the poorly implemented upgrade system. This game, however, excels in so many areas. With its incredibly interesting story and twisted characters, unique narrative structure, amazing music, and quick combat system, there's a lot to like here. If you want something that, despite being rough around the edges, dares to be different and is completely unapologetic about it, Drakengard 3 is your game. This has been Shintai, folks. Take it easy.